This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to another episode of Weights and Wealth. It's a bit of a stormy day here, but Nick and I are going to try to knock out a bunch of episodes for you.
Yeah, we're back in Studio West today because Alex is on a bachelorette party. So we figured it'd be a great weekend to knock out a few podcasts.
Absolutely. Our shout out for this episode goes to Blaze from Kansas City. He is our most engaging follower on Instagram and comments a lot. And those comments earn him raffle entries for the monthly gift card. So good job, Blaze. Thanks for helping us out and trying to grow the podcast. And if anyone else wants to try to match Blaze in commenting on the Instagram or sharing our stories or our posts, you too could earn a coffee gift card.
Yeah, Blaze is also a very active member of our Dynasty Fantasy Football League, and I'm still trying to get CD Lamb from him. So Blaze, please trade me CD.
Our weights wisdom of the week is to download MyFitnessPal or LifeSum or some other macro tracking app and just do it right now. And for the next 2 weeks, track your macros. You'll learn a lot when you start tracking macros about how many calories are in the foods that you eat and how much protein is in the foods that you eat, and just kind of on a daily basis where you fall in terms of calories and protein. And this is super helpful because after 2 weeks of getting a pretty good baseline of how you've been eating, you'll be able to see the average amount of protein that you're hitting, or if you're falling super low on protein or on some days, or if your calories are all over the place, or if they're pretty consistent. And just based off that data, you can make little changes that will go a long way in either helping you build muscle or lose weight or whatever your goal is. Macros is a really easy place to start, and will help you learn more about the foods that you eat.
Do you track your macros pretty consistently?
No, I don't, because I did for a while. So then I learned the protein content and the calorie content of things that I eat. But I still do go back to tracking macros if I'm trying to really put the work in on a cut or a bulk, and I want to be consistent, because I can get a pretty good feel for protein and calories just because I eat the same things a lot. Or if I'm eating a 90% whole food diet, it's pretty easy to kind of estimate. But if I want to be really exact and on my game for a cut or a bulk, I track macros because it's just the easiest.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way, because I tracked them for a while and kind of got an idea of how many calories I eat, how much protein I eat, how much protein's in something. And then now I just gravitate towards the whole food. So I know that I'm getting enough protein, because most of my meals are centered around usually ground beef, which I get a little sick of it after some time. But then every once in a while, just to make sure that I'm still eating, a balanced amount of carbs, fats, and proteins, I will track every once in a while.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful to shift back to. But after you do it for a little while, if you're just getting into it for the first time, if you do it for 2 months, you'll get a really good baseline, and then you can go off of it, but you'll still have a good idea of what you're eating. And then every once in a while, you can just go back to it for a few weeks.
Yeah, and once you start tracking, you become pretty good at estimating how many calories are in certain foods, because you just learn what you typically eat, and then you don't need to track as hardcore anymore. Yeah. And one of the issues I've always had is with cooking, when I'm using multiple ingredients. Do you have any advice do you literally measure everything out, the amount of olive oil you put in your pan and butter and all that?
Yeah, so an easy way to do it is if you're following a recipe, just take the 5 or 6 minutes to enter all the different things in, and then into the macro counting app, and then save that as a recipe per serving. And then whenever you meal prep that specific meal, you've got that recipe per serving saved. And then this meal prep lunch or whatever meal it is, okay, I know that this is 680 calories and 40 grams of protein. That's a really bad example. That's really low protein. Probably wouldn't meal prep something like that. But the point is, you'll know each serving of your meal prep, the estimated calories and protein in it. So that's what I do. I've got like 4 or 5 different recipes saved. And then whenever I make that recipe for meal prep, I've got it, because it's really easy to do like the rice and the veggies and the meat, and then it gets a little bit harder. But if you just add the amount of oil that you use, and then typically there's not too many other things in a meal prep. It's usually like something basic like rice, veggies, and meat. So
yeah, like the hardest part for me was just estimating like the oil. But
Yeah.
I guess if you just measure it out, and
yeah, you can measure it out, or you can just kind of eyeball it. But
yeah.
that's where you can get with extra calories. But if you're doing a meal prep, it's going to be spread out over more servings. So decreases the error if you are just eyeballing it. So,
yeah. All right. And then this week's intro article is about investing in the stock market, because in 2022, we were down 18%. And 2023, we're already up 9%. And people thought that the economy was going downward. So people likely started pulling their money out of the market. And this is just another example of why you shouldn't try to time the stock market.
yeah, with the Fed increasing the Fed funds rate, people were thinking that the stock market was going to go down, and they wanted to avoid the bottoming out. So a lot of people take their money out, and then when the biggest gains happen, which is right after the stock market comes out of the bottom, the biggest gains in the stock market usually aren't going up to the top. It's usually when it's coming out of the bottom. So if you take your money out when the stock market is going down, you're going to miss those gains coming out of the bottom, but you already took some of the losses when it started going down. So yeah, up 9% so far in 2023. People thought 2023 was not going to be a good year for the stock market, but plus 9%, that's a really good return. So
yeah. And like a great way to look at it is that stocks are on sale, not that the stock market's down. Because, if you were to have bought the S&P, I don't know what it's at now, but say it was at 350 and then it goes down to 320, you should like it a lot more at 320 than you liked it at 350.
Yeah. People just get scared whenever something starts going down.
Yeah.
So that's why Nick and I recommend investing for the long haul and just dollar cost averaging in and not really selling as much as you can. Just keep squirreling away that money in an index fund and just let it grow on its own.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the importance of investing long term and not really worrying about short term fluctuations. Because while the stock market does average like 7-8% every year, it varies a lot. It goes way up and way down some years.
Yep. Moving on to the presidential race, starting to heat up a little bit as we get closer to the primaries and the debates. Seems like both Republicans and Democrats might not have full debates with Trump and Biden, which is kind of interesting and kind of anti-American, I think. Nick, do you know who you like in the race so far?
So far I like RFK a lot. I just like how he's, a smaller government person, and then also because at least the way I view it is that Democrats like to tax and spend a lot, and Republicans like to not tax but still spend just as much. And I think he'll kind of pull back the spending, in addition to the taxation. And he also isn't into corporate handouts either, which I like.
I feel like one of the biggest lies of the Republican Party is that they're against government spending. You look at the champions of the right, and they always increase government spending. Reagan increased government spending. Trump increased government spending. They do it just like the Democrats do it. And I feel like the Republican Party tries to pretend that that's one of the things they run on.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons I like RFK. I think he might get a handle on spending because he is very much against some of these 3-letter agencies. So I like him for that reason. And RFK is the guy that I really like right now. I also like Vivek on the Republican side. But I've been listening to interviews for both of them, and when people were asking Vivek about government spending, he didn't really seem like he was going to try to reduce government spending at all. He thinks that he can grow the economy and we can work our way out of the deficit and the federal debt by just increasing the revenue that the government gets from taxes because of a stronger economy. But I don't think that's the right way to get out of the deficit.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to cut spending a lot. So
Do you see either of those guys actually getting the nominee? Because at least the way I kind of see it now is Vivek, he's still really small. Not too many people know him too well. I think he'll try to make a name for himself here and kind of get his name out there. I don't see him winning the primary. And then RFK just has an uphill battle because Biden's the incumbent.
Yeah.
And the DNC also nominates the candidate. It's not based on a vote.
So the DNC is very undemocratic in their primary process. So back in, I guess, 2016 or 2020? It would have been 2016. Bernie should have had the Democratic nomination for president throughout the primary. But then all the super delegates in the DNC voted for Hillary to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. So Bernie might have beat Trump if it was Bernie versus Trump.
You think so?
Hillary is so unelectable. So I feel like the Democrat Party is going to do the same thing here. They hate RFK. They won't even acknowledge him or give him any funding or let him on a debate stage. They're not going to allow him to run as the nominee, no matter what percentage he's polling at in the party. And Patrick Bet-David went into this because RFK, with the election laws, because he's running as a Democrat, he can't pull out and then try to run as a third party. He's already trying to run as a Democrat and he can't switch. So even if RFK winds up polling at 70% for the Democrats and 40% for the Republicans and would be like a landslide candidate, if the DNC decides that they don't want him as their candidate, he can't run.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So very, 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 very low chance of RFK being able to actually run.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be really cool to see a mixed ticket, like RFK and Vivek or some other, because I think that would be a lot more appealing to most people that, you know, that there aren't these like lifelong politicians running for president.
Yeah. Nobody wants Trump Biden.
Yeah.
And we're getting Trump Biden again, whether people like it or not.
Yeah, probably.
That's why Nick and I try to vote third party when we can, libertarian.
Yeah.
Spike Cohen might run at one point.
Yeah. I mean, he ran as the VP for Joe Jorgensen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still waiting for someone to get rid of the Department of Education. We'll see if that ever happens. I've been wanting a candidate to run on that for a long time, and I think Vivek actually said he would get rid of the Department of Education.
Okay.
Because it's technically unconstitutional. Education is supposed to be left to the states. 10th Amendment. People don't know the Constitution very well.
Yeah, it's like the FDA kind of. Like in theory, I think both those things should be great. You know, they should make education better and really regulate food, but they just don't really do their jobs well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and as we went over in the last education episode that we did, the increasing in government spending on education per student has led to worse outcomes. And yet the Department of Education is just funneling all this money into schools and education's getting worse. So also, as we'll get into in the second education episode, there's a lot of issues with the Department of Education lowering the standards of everyone. It's kind of like socialism, where it just brings everyone down instead of letting the people at the top rise and bring everyone else up with them. But we'll get into that more in the next part of the education series that we're doing.
Yeah. Should we get on to today's episode?
Let's do it.
Today we'll be covering health fads, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So Ted, what is our first positive health fad?
Our first positive health fad is that weightlifting is on the rise. The resistance training revolution that Sal DiStefano has been an advocate of. It's a good book if you want to check it out. I think it's in our Weights and Wealth book club.
I think so.
I think so. But weightlifting is officially on the rise. There's an article by NBC News. We will link that in the show notes. But it talked about how gyms are starting to shuffle around a lot of their space. They're starting to add more turf space for functional training, sleds, TRX, ropes. And they're also starting to add more weightlifting equipment and get rid of some of the cardio equipment. So a few years ago, they built a gigantic YMCA up in my hometown. It was like one of the biggest YMCAs in the country that they wound up building. RIP to the little tiny Southeast Y that I started off at. But when they built it, like more than half of it was all these treadmills and ellipticals and just this huge cardio section, and then a tiny weightlifting area. There were like 3 squat racks. It's one of the biggest Ys in the country. I was just shocked that they made such a small weightlifting area and such a big cardio area, because cardio is on its way out. Like people are starting to realize that weightlifting is the most beneficial thing you can do for your health. Not that cardio doesn't have its place in a healthy routine, but adding muscle on your body is going to be healthy for your metabolism. We have a huge metabolic issue in this country right now, and it'll make you stronger. So especially for people that are getting older, that are worried about falling and not being able to get up, muscle is the most protective thing you can have. I think muscle is better than Life Alert.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing that the article talked a lot about is that it's especially on the rise with women, because I mean, this is one of the benefits of social media, is that scrolling through, you will see a lot of women who are into lifting. And I kind of think the idea that women shouldn't lift is on its way out. And then also that if a woman touches a weight, that they'll look like Arnold all of a sudden, because that was going around for a while. That's so one popular thing that my mom has told my sisters, and it's just not true. Yeah. Yeah. And
I think women are starting to see other women on social media that lift, and they're starting to say, oh, they look toned. They don't look bulky, you know? And then they realize that lifting will help them look more toned. It's not going to make them look like Arnold, like a bodybuilder, or Lou Ferrigno. Yeah,
like the female bodybuilders work very, very hard to get their bodies to look like that, and often use steroids to help them get there.
That's what I've said to clients before, like women that are worried about getting too big and too bulky. I've been trying to get big and bulky for 8 years, and I have way more testosterone, so it's just not going to happen like that. But
yeah.
All right, moving on to a bad trend. Gummy worms and Sour Patch Kids and Rice Krispies for pre-workout carbs has been a huge trend on social media in younger lifters, high school kids, college kids, trying to get carbs before their workout. It doesn't really make sense, because as long as you're eating a normal amount of carbs in your diet, your glycogen stores for your muscle is going to fill up. Eating more carbs right before your workout, unless you're doing like 2-a-days, isn't really going to do anything to increase your glycogen stores, which is why people have carbs before their workout. So it's just a trend that people are doing, but they're just eating crap right before their workout.
Yeah, it's just not good quality food. And I imagine if you were to just eat like a bowl of rice, which doesn't have as much sugar in it, it would probably do like the same thing. And I mean, I've tried that. Like I've tried eating rice before my workouts, and I don't notice a difference at all.
Yeah.
Like I don't really notice a difference whether I've like fasted beforehand just by accident, or if I ate a big meal beforehand. It doesn't really make a difference to me, at least.
In college, when I had 2-a-days for ROTC in the morning and then lifting later in the day, when I started adding rice, I would meal prep rice with veggies with like a little bit of chicken, and I would eat that in class about an hour and a half, 2 hours before my workout, because my schedule was packed. So I was always going from one thing to the next, and I'd be carrying around my backpack and my gym bag with shaker bottles and meal prep. I always had like 3 bags at every class I was at. Sorry to everyone in my chemical engineering classes that had to deal with my shaking of pre-workout and creatine and protein shakes. I kept the shaker in there. It was always loud. I tried to leave the room and do it out in the hallway. It was a mess. But anyways, when I started doing that, it helped my pumps in the gym for sure. But I mean, that was just rice, just getting carbs a couple hours beforehand because I was doing those 2 a days. But yeah, to Nick's point, rice is going to work just as well as Sour Patch Kids. Like,
yeah. And I mean, I've always, for some reason, I've always been able to get a pretty good pump, but I also drink a ton of water and stay extremely hydrated. And recently I've also started adding salt to my water, which has started to become a trend, just because you need the electrolytes for your body to actually hold onto the water. And then if we're getting back to the reversal, we have honey as well. Raw honey has been on the uptrend.
Yeah. So to replace all that crap that people are giving themselves an excuse to eat right before their workout, there's a new trend on TikTok of kids having honey and salt instead of those foods. And like Nick was just saying, the 3 ingredients for a good pump are water, salt, and sugar. So honey and salt and some water, and keep yourself hydrated. That's a decent pre-workout snack if you're looking to do something to increase the pump. Again, if you're not really doing 2 a days and you're eating carbs anyway, your glycogen stores should be full, so it doesn't really matter. But everyone wants to do that extra, or every like young guy or girl that's trying to make gains as fast as they can wants to do the extra 0.5% thing that's going to get them more gains. I remember being there in college and just trying to figure out any little secret that would help gain muscle faster.
Yeah, but most of them don't work. It's really just lifting weights and eating a whole foods diet.
It's just consistency over time.
Yeah.
All right. Another bad trend. I might get some negativity because a lot of people think this is a positive trend. But I'm going to go with the carnivore diet as a negative. And people might be shocked because I eat a lot of meat. And like Nick and I have talked about eating like a meat-based diet essentially. But I think carnivore got a lot of hype because it is so effective for some people with health issues. When you remove all the processed foods and gluten and dairy and some of these common offenders that for some people are hurting them and their gut health, and you switch to only eating meat, which gives you pretty much everything your body needs, it can have these drastic effects on your health, these positive effects. But because it's become so popular, a lot of people are switching to carnivore and they're not eating any carbs, and carbs are still important for your hormones. So the reason I put it as a bad health trend is just because people that are already healthy are switching to the carnivore diet, and then they're not getting any carbs, which can have a negative effect on your hormones. If you want to read more about how cutting out carbs can affect your hormones, check out our Testosterone Ebook. You can put your email on our website, and we will send that ebook to you for free.
Yeah, like you kind of just said, I think it's more the move from processed food to non-processed food, because meat, it's not processed. Well, for at least recently hasn't been processed. They're talking about building meat in labs now, but it's not processed for now. And if you look at most carbs, most people get their carbs from bread, pasta, sugar, like candy.
Candy. One of the main food groups. Candy canes, candy corns, and syrup.
Yep. But yeah, and then, I mean, potatoes, like you eat a lot of potatoes. I've been trying to eat more potatoes because for a while my carbs were very low. And I know that's not ideal for testosterone production. I actually learned that from reading the ebook. So I've been trying to work more potatoes back in. Are there any other good carb sources that are whole foods?
I mean, my 2 favorite are rice and potatoes, but also fruit is good. Honey's good. And I mean, like bread, if you don't have a problem with gluten, like bread's fine. Like Alex and I started eating sourdough bread, and we're trying to start making sourdough bread. But with that, we know that the glyphosate is not good for us. So we're trying to do it all organic flour, trying not to have any of the Monsanto glyphosate that's destroying people's gut health. So
yeah, I was just talking about that with a guy at work. Like bread's really cheap and easy to make on your own, and plus everything that you're putting in it. I mean, even like a thing of bread, like the the label on the back is super long. And there are a bunch of additives. The gum that you talked about, the gum is in everything.
Yeah.
And it's in bread. So
yeah. There's no reason for an ingredient list on bread to be 40 ingredients long. It's just they're fortifying it and preserving it with all these different things. So swaying from the carnivore, because we go from the bad and then come back from that. So it's swaying to more meat-based. You're seeing carnivore people like Paul Saladino switch to a meat-based or animal-based instead, where they're still starting to get carbs. So like Paul Saladino, his name is Carnivore MD. He was a huge proponent of carnivore, wrote books on being carnivore, and now you see him eating fruit and honey. And one thing about that real quick, I think we should encourage people to publicly like change their mind on things like that. That's good to see. What you don't like to see is someone just dig into a position that they held just because they're afraid to say that they were wrong about something. So I have a lot of respect for Paul Saladino, whose identity and source of income was based around being carnivore, and then he switched and said, actually, I'm finding that my hormones are better when I incorporate some fruit and some honey. My workouts are better. I have a lot of respect for someone that's able to publicly change their opinion on something like that.
Yeah, because they're just being honest, and it just makes you want to trust them more. Where if somebody digs into a position after, the trend is kind of over, it kind of makes them irrelevant and not trustworthy.
And then a good thing from that whole trend grouping is that whole foods and high protein seem to be trending positively online. I feel like a lot of people are starting to see how processed foods are having a negative impact on their metabolic health and their weight and their body fat percentage and their inflammation in their body. And people are switching to trying whole food diets. I'm not sure how long people are sticking to it, but I feel like you're definitely seeing, at least on social media, a trend of people going towards higher protein and more whole food based diets. All right, another bad. Somehow this is still a trend. I don't know how, but the juicing hormone detoxes where you're just eating juice and losing a bunch of weight super quick. It's a trend because someone will do it for 2 weeks and they'll lose 15 pounds because they're not eating anything, and they're getting dehydrated sometimes, and they're losing bulk in their digestive tracts. There's multiple reasons why you might lose weight on a diet like that, but then they just go back to eating how they were eating before, and their weight is right back where it was.
Yeah, because they kill their metabolism drops, and then
in 2 weeks it's probably not. If it's only a 2 week detox, it's probably not going to drop like that.
Okay, because I did use that strategy at one point to try to gain weight in high school. Is the yo-yo diet, just not eat for a while and then start eating again and hope that my metabolism dropped enough. And then another reason why they'll drop weight is that you just have less food in your stomach. I mean, over the course of a day, like if I weigh myself, I'm usually right around 190 in the morning, and then by the afternoon I'll be 195, 196. And that's just from drinking water and having food in my stomach.
So are you saying that when you used to cut for wrestling, you would take a big poop right before you weigh in to try to make weight?
Yep.
That was strategies?
A lot of people had that strategy, yes. Yeah.
I think you'd be better off sweating in the sauna for an hour.
People did that too.
Yeah. On most of these, we have like a pendulum of where the bad trend is swinging to in a good direction. I don't have a positive for this one. I don't think this juicing hormone detox thing is ever going away. It sounds like an immediate fix for people to drop 15, 20 pounds. I think people will always be attracted to that don't really know much about fitness and health and dieting and nutrition. So I think it will always be there for people that are looking for a quick fix.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
And it's just, I kind of think it's just a way for these MLMs to kind of make money, because these juice detoxes are extremely expensive. I mean, I've seen ads for them, and it's like 20 something bucks a day for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
absolutely a marketing scam.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to another one. A positive trend is ice baths. I think that that's really good for a lot of people's mental health. You're seeing all the effects come out on mental health and even just energy levels during the day because of the hormones that are stimulated when you do an ice bath. And we can do a deeper dive episode on ice baths if people want it after this little introduction for the trends here. But the value of doing something hard and starting your day with something hard with the ice bath that people are promoting on social media, I think that's good. People generally have very easy lives. Everything's so cushiony for us. Even the climate control aspect of turning the AC all the way up in the car and then coming home to AC. And when you go outside and it's 95, it's just so hot and it's hard to deal with it because you're used to having this climate controlled life. We don't have that much manual labor that we have to do. Everything's on our computers for a lot of people. So
yeah, I mean that's the main reason I do it is just getting in the shower. I try to do as many cold showers as possible, and I mean knowing that it's only going to last 5 minutes and just trying to force myself just to get through it. It just feels like I accomplished something.
Yeah.
And then also I do feel a lot better after a cold shower. Just having the really cold water hit me, it really wakes me up in the morning. That's what I did this morning.
Yeah.
To just wake myself up.
Nick was not getting out of bed for this podcast.
We were up a little too late playing Catan last night because we got a new variation of it.
Yes.
So
thank you to a listener for Colin Morris for sending us a new version of Catan. So I think there's a lot of positives for the ice baths, but a lot of people are hating on it because if you're going to do an ice bath right after your workout, to blunt inflammation, you actually want that inflammatory response post-workout because it's going to lead to adaptation. It's a stress response that your body's supposed to have after a workout. You want that inflammation. If you try to ice right after a workout, well, now you're killing that inflammatory response and you're actually going to recover less. So if you are using ice baths, you can use it in the morning, but doing it right after your workout isn't going to be beneficial for your gains. So yeah. A lot of people are hating on it for that reason, but there's a difference between the morning ice bath and the post-exercise ice bath.
Yeah, I think those got popular because athletes use them, but that's more when they're in season because if you lower the inflammation, you will recover faster because they aren't trying to really get stronger. They're just trying to recover at that point.
Yeah. Although you're starting to see more strength coaches for these professional teams like Corey Schlesinger for one of the basketball teams. I don't follow basketball. If there's a Phoenix basketball team, I think that's the one.
The Suns, Phoenix Suns, yeah. I think. Yeah.
But he has his players keep on moving and doing these micro weightlifting, getting a pump session after games to help them recover faster. So there's a lot of emerging science and evidence there for, same with injuries. Now you'll hear a lot of PTs say after an injury, make sure you keep moving, right? Our friend, Dr. Kevin, he recommends doing hundreds of really light reps for something. If you feel, something kind of, not tear during your workout, but if you, can't believe I can't find the word. If you kind of pull something during your workout, he recommends bringing the muscle through that range of motion with really, really light weight just to kind of get a pump and keep it moving and keep the blood flowing through that muscle. So we're going to have an interview with Dr. Kevin at some point. He's up in Ohio, so we're just trying to figure out how to make that work since we do all of our interviews in person. But we will get Dr. Kev on the show at some point. All right, moving on from the ice baths, bad trend. Obesity is still on the rise. I think this is one of the greatest threats facing America. I think our obesity problem is much bigger than any of the problems you hear politicians say are facing us. The fact of the matter is obesity is going to bankrupt this country faster than almost anything else, way faster than military spending or other things that people claim are out of control.
Yeah, because our medical spending is so high, and if people lived healthier lives, you wouldn't have to spend as much on medical, and that money could be used towards a more productive use.
And like metabolic syndrome and obesity and diabetes and these things are such a strain on the medical system in so many ways, whether it's personnel or capacity or medications, or just the effects that like a metabolic syndrome will lead to in terms of cardiovascular disease, cancer, all these other effects that being unhealthy will have on your life, and increase medical costs in other areas of your life. So,
and that's one of my hopes for RFK as well, because I mean he got popular by suing like large polluters. So I mean, I haven't read anything on it, but I would hope that he would go after these large food companies and hopefully try to do something about the food issue, because that's the main source of it.
If he doesn't wind up being able to run, I hope that whoever does become president just has him become this bulldog for them in getting rid of a lot of the environmental pollution. Because like that is what he's done his whole career, is get rid of these major polluters. So if he can just keep doing that as like a right-hand man for whoever the president is, I feel like that would be beneficial, because that's one of the reasons we like him, is we think he's going to clean up the environment and get rid of all these environmental toxins that are destroying people's health.
Yep.
All right. That is all we've got for the good, the bad, the ugly of current health trends. If you like this episode, share it with a friend. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.